Just to give you a brief explanation or definition of what a maternity home is, it's usually an illegal business that is operated in a home where the business operator receives foreign women that do come in legally under a traveler's visa. They come and they give birth, and then they're taken care of for about between 20 to 30 days, and then afterwards they go back to their home country. And now with all these social issues that we're currently sort of experiencing, particularly immigration, which is very controversial. Having or hearing of women coming to the United States just to give birth and then leave so that their children can have citizenship. It's a very sensitive topic, right? And so, this causes the public to sort of, protest, so to speak, about it. And this situation actually is pretty prevalent. They move around from city to city. They'll get shut down in one city, but they'll just pop up in another city. And it's very hard to address this issue because they are operating in a home where you can't just, kick down the door and inspect the home and find that there's a business, right? There's no obvious crimes committed, and obviously you would need a warrant to go inside. You can't just, go in, right? But, you do have the pressure, right? If you're a city manager and you have council telling you that, you need to take care of this situation along with a segment of the population that's very much against this type of business, what do, right? Do you have, code enforcement go out and just start, having random inspections without proper evidence, right? Do you have, the sheriffs go out all the time? I mean, is it a crime? Obviously not, right? And, it might end up sort of being harassment. And as a city manager, you do have a code of ethics that you have to follow, right? Anything that you do has to be based off of facts, right? You have to uphold the law, and you have to be truthful, right? But in light of this type of situation, which is very real, you have the public submitting photos of, pregnant women, them identifying, which homes are operating this business, and again, having the pressure of council telling you to act. What do you do in this situation, right? Do you, like I mentioned before, do you just, start randomly, accepting sort of public feedback and going to inspect these homes, right? I mean, you may end up, going to the wrong home, right? And especially in situations like this, there's also a racial sort of issue there, right? Because they are women from foreign country, which they come in legally, right? They're not violating any laws, right? And but you do need to, sort of shut down these illegal home businesses, right? So you do have to um, find a proper solution there without violating anybody's rights per se. Now let's just say that you do have a solution, right? All home businesses in any city are usually regulated by a certain ordinance, right? Small business, home business, they have to provide registration, and you can go in and inspect the business just to see if everything is safe, right? That is something that can be done, but how do you go about doing that? When you can't actually identify these homes factually, right, based off of evidence that there's an illegal business there, right? You can't just go off of mere pictures of pregnant women. So do you take a utilitarian approach, knowing that these homes are most likely maternity homes based off of pictures and the public reporting it, right? And just send out code enforcement and randomly inspect homes and sort of scare these business away, or do you stick to sort of a more of a duty approach, right, based off of principle and sort of your code of ethics, right, as a city manager? But I think when you have an ethical dilemma like this, it's usually best to sort of approach it based off of um, duty ethics, right? You have your code of ethics to follow, and you do need to uphold the law, right? You can't violate anybody's rights and just start having random inspections based off of hearsay, right? However, there is an alternative to this because as I mentioned before, there are ordinances in each city that regulate home businesses, short-term rentals like Airbnb, long-term rentals as a small business in itself, right? And with that, there is rental registration, right? Or business registration that businesses or individuals need to register with the city. Now, if it were me, as city manager, I would sort of take that route in addressing it. But it's kind of difficult, right? I mean, how do you go about, identifying these homes, right? It's a delicate balance, right? I mean, there are obvious signs of businesses, and I think that's what you should treat it as, right? As a business. If there were reports of other businesses, other types of business in the city, like for instance, maybe a small baking business, right? In somebody's home, and somebody notices that, people are coming in and out, there's more traffic, and people are carrying cakes in and out, right? And that's sort of identifying it as a business, and in this situation, I wouldn't go about it with identifying pregnant women per se. I would just base it on, there's certain things, right? There's deliveries, there's high traffic as well, and there are other sort of signs that's noticeable when somebody is operating a small business. And I would have code enforcement go out, politely knock, right, and say that there have been reports that there is a business operating at this residence, right? But it also depends on how they respond, right? If they say no, then unfortunately we just have to let it be. Right, and if they do happen to say yes or say something along those lines, then based off of code and ordinances in your city, you can address it accordingly. And as the videos that we've seen this week, right, you can reach out to other cities, right, that have possibly successfully, addressed this type of situation, and you can ask your peers, well, how did you guys go about doing it without sort of violating any kind of ethics, codes, rights, or the law, right? That's always a good way to address a situation. If something works in another city or another area, it could work for your city. And so there are lots of ways to address a situation without having to break ethics or worse. Well, and I'll end with this. This particular situation is pretty prevalent, and it's not the last that people will see of this. So, if it ends up in your city later on, if you're a city manager, or just a public administrator in general, what would you do, right, in this type of situation? And I'll leave that for you to think about. Yeah, well, have a good week.